What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Real Packers Talk, the podcast dedicated to everything green and gold. I am your host, Ethan Peltier, and today I wanted to hop on briefly to discuss the 53-man roster that just came out. I know I am a little bit late getting around to this, however, I figured I would just quickly run through it, and then hopefully either tomorrow or definitely sometime before Sunday, I want to release a Packers versus Vikings kind of preview where I'll look ahead at the game, kind of give some predictions, key players, that kind of stuff. Anyways, about a week ago, the 53-man roster was officially released, and keep in mind this is just the initial 53-man roster. Things are bound to change, things will change. This is not set in stone. But without further ado, I'm just going to start with offense like I normally do, switch over to defense, and literally just go through every position group, name every single player, and then give some thoughts. Starting with quarterback, the Packers decided to go with two, Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. Honestly, I don't really feel like there should be many surprises here, so I don't feel like I need to touch on it that much. I'm going to leave it at that. For running back, the Packers decided to keep two as well. Now, this might be a bit of a surprise. For this position group, we kept Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Obviously, that's the 1-2 punch that's going to be running this backfield for most of the season. However, I do think that people are surprised that Tyler Goodson didn't make the team. He did make the practice squad, however, which is good news. And at some point, I think the plan is to bring Kylan Hill off the PUP come week 4. So this is definitely a position that is going to change in the coming weeks. 2 is just the initial number that they wanted to rock with for now. Moving on over to the wide receiver position, which is one that I think is always competitive, the Packers decided to go with 7. Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb, Sammy Watkins, Amari Rodgers, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Samori Toure. I thought there was a chance that Juwann Winfrey might make the roster cut. However, it seems that Samori Toure was able to get that 7th spot ahead of him. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we see Juwann Winfrey suit up for a regular season game sometime down the road. Injuries do happen. We've obviously got a very young, inexperienced wide receiver room, which is okay. It's going to take time. These guys need to get out on the field and play. And personally, I do expect to see a lot of growing pains as far as quarterback to receiver being on the same page this season, at least early on. That being said, I do think this is a talented group of receivers, one that can go out and win games if they need to. It's just going to take time for them to learn the system and get that running full speed ahead, if you know what I mean. Now moving on to tight end, the Packers decided to roll with 4, and they kept Big Bob Tonyan, Mercedes Lewis, Josiah DeGuara, and Tyler Davis. This is another position group that I don't really have a lot to speak about. I'm not personally surprised that they rolled with 4, and the 4 guys they kept I think are all fine. There might be some people who were surprised that Tyler Davis made the roster, but I wouldn't be. He's had a great training camp. He's had several practices that have been awesome. He had a couple mistakes in the preseason. It's okay. He'll be okay. I am excited to see Robert Tonyan get back onto the field. Hopefully he can have a big year. But like I said, I don't really have much to say about the tight end position. To wrap up the offensive side of the ball, I'm now going to cover the offensive line. And for that, the Packers decided to roll with 10, keeping David Bakhtiari, Yosh Nijman, John Runyon, Josh Myers, Royce Newman, Elton Jenkins, Jake Hansen, Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, and Sean Ryan. Without question, the big obvious question mark that we have this season is how are Elton Jenkins and David Bakhtiari going to hold up after being gone for so long? They've both been injured. They both missed significant time last year, but they're both back and could potentially both play in week 1, which is huge, exciting news, by the way. It kind of goes without saying, but in order for the Packers to be successful this year, this offensive line is going to have to play well, and they're going to have to stay healthy as well. This is another group of guys that is relatively young on the roster. I mean, if you look at it, John Runyon, Josh Myers, Royce Newman, Jake Hansen, Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, and Sean Ryan are all within their first couple years in the league, if not, rookies. And they're definitely going to be put to the test against some pretty beefy defensive lines this year. I mean, week one, right away, out of the gates, you're going against the Vikings in Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith. That's not going to be an easy task for a lot of these young guys. That being said, I do think this is a group of guys that can be successful, and I am excited to see how they develop as the season goes on. And that's about everything that I had for the offensive side of the ball. To quickly summarize it all, this is a talented group, albeit a very young group, depending on what position you're looking at. A very inexperienced group, depending on what position you're looking at. However, I think this is an offense that, with the right scheme, can go out and score points. So, it's definitely not going to be the high-flying offense that Packers fans have been used to. But I do think that we're going to be able to go out and put points up on the board. And then, obviously, anytime Aaron Rodgers is your starting quarterback, I think you have a pretty good shot at winning some games in the NFL. But yeah, that's all I had for offense. We're now going to move over to the defensive side of the ball. Starting with the defensive line, the Packers kept 6. Kenny Clark, Jerron Reed, Dean Lowry, TJ Slayton, Devontae Wyatt, and Jonathan Ford. Don't really think that there are a ton of surprises here. Obviously, Kenny Clark is the anchor of that defensive line. It was nice to see that the Packers went out and made a free agent signing in Jerron Reed, so we get a little bit of a veteran presence there as well. And then obviously the Packers did invest some draft capital in Devontae Wyatt in the first round this year out of Georgia. So I do think this is going to be a good defensive line, one that they've obviously spent time and invested in. So I expect good things from this group. For outside linebacker, the Packers decided to roll with 5, keeping Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Jonathan Garvin, Tipa Galea, I hope I'm saying that right, and Kingsley Enagbare. I apologize, I'm now tripping over my words. I think we should all expect to see a very productive year from Rashawn Gary. What I am about to say might seem a little crazy or far-fetched, especially if you're not an actual Packers fan. But I think Rashawn Gary could be a dark horse candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. Sorry, not sorry. We'll see what happens. I will say the depth at outside linebacker does concern me just a little bit. You do worry what happens if an injury occurs. There's not a lot of experience behind Preston Smith as far as the depth chart goes. Moving on to inside linebacker, the Packers decided to go with 4. And honestly, none of these should be a surprise. Devontae Campbell, Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie, and Chris Barnes. Personally, I think that this would have been the easiest position to predict had I come out with a prediction like I said I would. Sorry, I'm a little bit behind on my work right now. But I do like the group that we're rocking with here. Obviously, we have Devontae Campbell, who's come off his the best season of his career. He was an All-Pro. I really am excited to see Quay Walker in the mix as well now that we have, we can pair him up with the All-Pro and Devontae Campbell, kind of let him take him under his wing and show him the ropes. And then I do think that Isaiah McDuffie and Chris Barnes are good depth pieces. What is exciting is that this is probably the best inside linebacker core that the Packers have had in a good long while. Moving over to cornerback, the Packers decided to go with 5, keeping Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, Rasul Douglas, Shamar Jean-Charles, and Keyshawn Nixon. I think this is another position that is very solid. Obviously, having Jair come back is huge. He was gone most of last year with an injury. And then obviously you've got guys like Eric Stokes who you drafted recently in the past because of their athleticism and their speed. And then we've got Rasul Douglas, who we signed last year, who came in from the Cardinals practice squad, mind you, and then put the whole league on notice. So, glad to see that we were able to sign Rasul back this year. I do think that this is a very talented cornerback group. And it's kind of funny because historically, I feel like Packers fans we've always kind of had crap corners, but I feel like we have a good solid group this year, this go around. And finally, to wrap up the defensive side of the ball, we've got safety. The Packers decided to go with 5, keeping Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, Tariq Carpenter, Dallin Levitt, and Micah Abernathy. Now, besides outside linebacker, I do believe that safety is the other position group on defense that depth is a little bit of a concern. You've obviously got your guys, Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos, but what happens if either one of those guys goes down? I do think that we saw some nice things from both Tariq Carpenter and Micah Abernathy in the preseason, but depth is just one of those things that I do worry about just a little bit when it comes to safety. And last but not least, we cannot forget about the 3 special teams positions. For kicker, obviously we've got Money Mason Crosby. For punter, the Packers just recently signed Pat O'Donnell this offseason from the Chicago Bears, so that will be interesting. And then our long snapper is going to be Jack Coco. And there you have it. That's the initial 53-man roster. As I mentioned earlier, things are subject to change. This is not going to be set in stone. We're probably going to see a couple of moves, especially considering guys that are on the PUP, like Kylan Hill. Unfortunately, injuries are part of the game, so knock on wood, hopefully we won't see a ton of them this year. But yeah, like I said, I just wanted to hop on real quick, share the 53-man roster, share some thoughts. I do plan on putting out a Week 1 preview episode at some point before Sunday, so there's that to look forward to. That's about everything I had for today. I do want to thank you all for tuning into today's episode. It means a ton to me. You can find my podcast anywhere on Spotify, YouTube, Anchor, and SoundCloud. Please feel free to comment, like, and subscribe to the podcast, as well as share it to any friends and family. I do hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I'm going to leave y'all with a Go Pack Go. Peace.